Yeah, let's start. Let's do it. Yeah, if you want to. Oh, it's on. Okay, now we're good. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to How To Publishing, a community conversation. To my left here is Savannah. We have Ava, Tara, and Hannah. We have some little intros that I'm going to read. Ava Parra is a researcher, educator, and printer. She is the co-founder of Calipso Press, a printing studio, publishing label, and artist collective established in 2015 in Colombia and since 2022 has been based in New York. Small Editions was started out of a walk-in closet, a walk-in apartment closet in 2012 by Kerna Reynolds and Kimberly McClure. In 2019, Small Editions was taken over by Hannah Pierce over here. Drawing from a background in design strategy, arts programming, and independent publishing, her approach to client work is collaborative with an emphasis on education about the production and distribution process. Secret Riso Club is a graphic design and risograph studio that focuses its work on the intersection of social justice, art, design, and community building. Tara Ridgedell has a background in education and comes to the practice with accessibility in mind. Her work focuses on both inward and outward connection and breaking down capitalism's individual-centered focus. And then I'm going to pass it off to Savannah.
So yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. I think we just want to start this off by saying there are so many amazing artists that come to Print and Matter, and they have a lot of questions about, like, you know, I made this book and maybe I'm in school, but now like my resources have changed. So just basically like we wanted to gather this group of people together that have amazing individual practices and community practices, and just answer some questions that we hear like on a daily basis at Print and Matter. So yeah, maybe if you guys would want to start by just describing how you got started in your practice.
Yeah, it's on. Hello. Should be.
Push it up.
Okay.
Does that work?
This one's working here. Sorry.
I'm so bad at technology. Just working. Literally just working. I mean, I can try to project my voice pretty loud. I don't know if you can hear it all the way back, but does it work now? Hello.
Oh, there we go. Maybe. Hello, hello.
The other microphone would.
Sorry about that, everyone. Okay. Oh, I think it's a range thing. Okay, cool. All right, cool. All right, so I'll start.
I guess I got my start in publishing just because I think when I was in school, I always found myself gravitating towards using the form of a book to communicate whatever it was that I was working on, whether that was trying to build or try to think of strategies for either like banking systems or something like that, whether that became a handbook or a workbook, and was really drawn to the tactile nature of bookmaking. And I then was working sort of in interdisciplinary fields and found that there was a lack between or a lack of a conversation between different disciplines, between art and design, and simultaneously was really interested in sort of the works in progress and the work that you make in the process of making work. So in 2018, I started a journal on my own and invited a bunch of different artists. Some were friends, some were random people, some were people I found on Tinder, and invited all these people and part of their practices to submit something to this magazine. And I curated, designed, and printed the journal, and used that sort of as an exploration to continue further working with artists. And then the second year that I did it, I took a class at SVA from Paul John, who founded Endless Editions, and used that journal as a way to sort of like learn more about bookmaking and become more integrated in a community. And then I was introduced to one of the co-founders of Small Editions, and wanted to find a sustainable way to keep making books with artists, and so I took over in 2019, and that's kind of how I got started. It's good actually.
Hello, I'm Tara from Secret Riso Club. I would say my way of getting introduced to like artist books and small publishing is very different. I never went to art school, or I have a family who would tell me over and over like art don't pay the bills, like very anti-art, I suppose, while they were crafts folks as well. But I had always been interested in making books, made them a lot as a child, and you know, when I moved to New York, I met my friend Gonzalo, who I run the press with, and just happened kind of organically that we started working together. Our skill sets, temperaments, everything fits together really well for doing this type of work. I love a spreadsheet, he doesn't, so things kind of work together pretty well for that. And we really just started making, and that's still something I try to incorporate a lot, is just doing it. There's a lot of, I guess I can tend to feel that like imposter syndrome of not having gone to art school, but I also think that gives me like a different perspective on what it is. And so just forcing myself to like work through that and continue making. And it's really, I've really enjoyed like getting to know the book community here, and like being constantly inspired to continue to make that way. And I'm very excited to see how my like process and making continues to change. I just quit my full-time job, so we'll see. Yeah. It shall continue.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Eva Parra. I'm part of Calipso Press. So, well, Calipso Press is Camilo Otero and I. And the question is how we started with all of this. So it all started because we had a friend that is called Yuji Kawashima, and this was 2013 in Madrid. His lease was out, he didn't have a place to live, and my friend Yuji Kawashima is part Japanese and part Brazilian, and we invited him to stay with us because he didn't have any place to live. And he didn't want to impose or be a burden to us. And we had to invent this whole story of he coming to our house as a residency program. And Camila and I had this Zine collection. And we said, okay, so you can curate this Zine collection. We're going to do an exhibition in our own living room. And then you won't be staying here and taking us for granted. You're gonna be doing this residency program. And that was gonna be a weekend, and it got out of hand. Like some designers got involved, extra curators got involved, and all of a sudden it was like a 3-country Zine exhibition. It was Colombia, Brazil, and Spain. And as a happy accident, it was the same day of the Madrid Art Book Fair. And I don't know if you know this, but Madrid Art Book Fair has an hour for siesta, so they actually close in the middle of the day, and everybody just goes out. And they came home, and they were just like very excited to see their scenes exhibited in our living room. And I got to meet like these crazy editors and publishers and people in my own living room, and they were so happy to see that happening. And there I met Beto Galvao, who used to run Melimelo Press in Sao Paulo, and he made a promise to us. He said, if you ever go to Colombia and you buy a Riso, I will go and teach you everything I know. And I don't know if you know him, but at the time he was one of the finest Riso printers. So we eventually moved to Colombia. We bought a Riso. We called Beto. He came. He taught us everything he knew, and here we are. Like, we have a Riso.
What was the first book or zine that each of you made when you were kind of getting started, either with your individual presses or starting off in your artistry?
My first zine that I made myself was called Hooky, and I was a teacher for like 10 years, and it's really rough to wake up at 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning, go to school. So I was pretty great at coming up with excuses for getting out of work, playing hooky. And so my first zine was a book of excuses to get out of work. And my coworkers never knew.
I guess I kind of mentioned it in my entrance into bookmaking, but the first sort of like serious approach to zine making where I sort of editioned something, the interdisciplinary works in progress journal was called Low Key Magazine, just to be something casual and something that people could really submit quick drafts to. And so the first one was digitally printed, and it was like all of my rent money for an entire month. And I was like, how much cheaper can I get this? Like, how much will you take off if I collate the pages myself? How much will you take off if I staple everything myself? And then for the second year, I Riso printed everything. But that was the first zine that I made.
Nice. Well, I guess the first zine that I made was the catalog for said exhibition that I was talking to you about. But the first one that I made, like it was my zine, it is one called Fermentos, which translates for ferments in English. And it's kind of a PowerPoint made into a zine that I use when I do workshops about fermenting. And it has like random thoughts about fermenting.
I guess, Hannah, you just touched on like a good next point of advice for like specifically, I guess, resources of like, you know, things. It can be very expensive. It can be a very expensive practice to continue. Just practical advice with, I guess, specifically the financial aspect of things and getting going.
Are we talking about resources or like any tips about? Yeah. Okay, I think I'm the worst person to ask this question because I moved here a year and a half ago, and I'm struggling with finding, like, setting my network of like, yeah, sorry? Yeah. And I've been asking around, but also I had this really nice network in Colombia, and I kind of wanted to make it work, to keep working with the people back there. But yeah, it's kind of hard. So maybe I'm not the best person.
Okay, I guess it might cross over into like a couple other questions. But firstly, I think that the resources that you use and the things that you make, I think when I first went into publishing, I believed that you needed to have, everything needed to be printed perfectly, everything had to be really high quality in order to make a good book. But I think you can use whatever you do have access to, whether that's exploiting, you know, institutions' resources, like printing, like our friend Holly, who runs a Relevant Press, was like, yeah, if you just like use your Works printer to print all your zines. Or like staples and stuff like that. So I think just knowing what you do have access to, connecting with other people that you know who might be making things, and seeing, you know, what you might collectively have as resources, I think is really important. In terms of making expenses work, I think when I was first doing it, you know, some people might have a credit to take education classes through their work, and so maybe taking I know a lot of people that took the risograph printing class and were using their work to pay for it. I paid for that because the class was, I think, $650 at the time, and it was cheaper than paying another printer to print the work. So I could teach myself how to print and how to have the skill set to split files. But then at the end of it, I had a book in production, and was able to make connections with the SVA Riso Lab community. And now I think it's also just like, yeah, it continues to be like we ask each other. I feel like Tara and Gonzalo and I will ask each other for resources, or Lucky Risograph has way more colors than I do, so I've printed a zine at their studio. They've used my foil stamping machine. You guys borrowed one of my foil stamping machines, but I think building that community of friends that are making things together and whatever you might have access to, I think is the biggest thing that you can do, the best thing.
Yeah, I'd 100% echo that. Absolutely steal resources from work, steal the paper, steal the Xerox, do everything you can to get your money back from them taking your labor. Also, again, like Hannah said, I mean, building a community of people, but again, it doesn't need to be, you can just print it on whatever you have. Just the process of just making, I think is more important than making it look perfect, and just getting it out there as much as you can. Some of my favorite zines that I have are just Xerox printed small ones, but the content I think really speaks to me, so appreciate those.
What we should look for? What do you usually look for or ask for when you're looking for someone to print your work, or when you were first getting started?
When we're looking for someone, we do almost everything ourselves, probably to a fault. We're starting to try to outsource some things because we're just two people, and it really becomes more about capability and time rather than it's so fun to learn these new practices and learn new things. Borrowing the foil stamping machine from Hannah was great, and now we know how to foil stamp, but it gave us a lot of respect for people who foil stamp all day long because it's difficult. So it's been interesting for the few things that we have tried to outsource around here. The New York old school printer, the printer dudes, I don't know. We sent out so many emails, and we got a bunch of emails back that were not for us, not for us. We won't do that. We won't work with y'all. A lot of people doing digital printing, they are not amenable to bringing in Riso printed insides to bind with a digitally printed cover. But we have found a few folks, really thanks to Hannah, using her network, and found a few people who are willing to work, and then just kind of word of mouth, putting it out there, asking and asking and asking. And it does take, some ways to educate people on what is Riso, because, digitally printing a book, you're able to print the whole book in one run, rather than with Riso printing all of one page and then all of the next page. So I think they're really hesitant to bring on Riso printed work, also because if they screw it up, they feel like they're liable. So just asking and telling the process and being we will give you 100 extra, copies of this page. Don't worry if you fuck it up, that's fine. But just kind of educating them too on the process. But there's been some folks who are willing to do so. So yeah.
I don't know what to add to that. In terms of vendors?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess in looking for vendors, I think what's really important, because we are a publishing studio that mostly when we're publishing work, we're handling the production process either between ourselves or the artists and trying to achieve things with what we can do in-house because it's cheaper. Whereas when we're doing client production work, we're usually partnering with a bunch of different vendors. And that's been something that we've built a network of vendors for people that we've built trust with, who maybe don't take on work from individual artists. They maybe only would take something that's a trade job. So we kind of are that trade partner for them. But when I'm looking for a vendor, I try to think about having all of the specifications of whatever the project is that I'm doing. What's the minimum that I would want to make? What's the maximum that I would want to make? Most printers, foil stampers, other vendors would all have minimums. They all have different parameters. Some people include it on their website, but a lot of printers that I think something important to understand is that the print industry, as a printer, it's an industry with an 8% margin, which is incredibly low. So they're just churning work. All they're doing, if you have a printing press, it runs 24 hours a day. If it's like a Indigo digital printing press, which you use for things that are super high quality, get really good renderings, but that press is running 24 hours a day, and there's 3 shifts of people who work on that 24 hours a day. So they're never not printing, which in people coming back to you with really short responses or I'm not taking this, is just they have to process so much volume that they're not going to make time to kind of walk you along through the process. They're just going to say, this works, this doesn't, or give me your file. And if you just hand your file over, they're not going to necessarily tell you how to fix it. You might see it and it might not print well, and you don't know why. And it might not be their fault. It might just be the way that the file's set up. So I think understanding how many you're making, how are your files set up, or asking them, what are your minimums? What's your maximum and minimum size? Where necessarily are there price breaks? How do you want the files handed to you in the best way, or what color spaces? So you get sort of into this very nerdy nitty gritty, but that if you're building relationships with people, the more that you're able to bring to them to suss out, instead of just, they're not going to ask you determining questions. But yeah, I think that's kind of probably the most important thing. And then just over time, either you could ask, if it's something that you think you're going to be working with someone for a long time, maybe they will offer you samples, or you can ask for a work sample for something to look at. If you want to be really sure about the print quality, or sometimes there are places I've been where they'll let you come look at things, but you can't necessarily take it with you. That happens with us a lot, where it's hard for us to be able to, we make books in such small volume that we can't really give things out. But yeah, I think that's the important thing, is really trying to build a relationship and understanding that there are things that you probably don't know, and they're probably not going to help you, which sucks. But I think trying to talking with other people, where I have, some people are new to foil stamping, but they know that I foil stamp, so I can tell them how to set up files and stuff like that. And yeah, I think there's some good resources out there, especially Riso printing too. I think a lot of Riso printers have done a really, really good job of determining what works, some super high rendered CMYK for 4-color prints, whether you're trying to get it to look like a photograph, it's probably not going to look totally like that. But yeah, I think people put good resources out there, but that's what I would say to look for vendors.
Okay, yeah, that was very helpful. So kind of flipping it, all of you guys run your individual presses. So what is something, I guess if someone brings you a book that they want to print, how do you go about that process? Deciding, who to work with?
In Calipso, we print books for people. I mean, we're a press, and we can get hired, and then we publish our own books. When someone wants to print a book and they want to hire my services, I would just have a brief interview with them, see if the files are going to be okay, see how much work that is going to be, see if Riso is the best printing method, or maybe they're looking for something else. And if it's a good fit, I will quote them and I will print that for them. But when it comes to the books that we published, I told you the Yuji story before, that my friend coming for a residency program, and that kind of stayed with us. And now every time that we make a book, it turns into a residency program. We have done some online, like from afar, but most of the time is the person comes to live with us for a period of time. They stay in our home, we share meals, we make everything together, and then we make a book together, and it's kind of like all in a process. So we do that with the projects that we think that that we like. I mean, that's pretty much it, yeah.
We primarily publish our own work, myself and Gonzalo's work. But we do like contract printing, so if someone wants to print with us, we have a quote form on the website. Have spent a lot of time making that quote form, the spreadsheets behind it, just hired a coworker to do some good Excel formulas for us. It's something that we're like always trying to revamp, because it can take a lot of time to make a quote for somebody, especially with Riso. You're calculating labor hours, you're calculating number of masters, you're calculating, price per page, how much paper costs. And then a lot of times people will be like, okay, great, now can you do it again for 300 copies? Now can you do it again for 500 copies? And they don't necessarily know that it took at least 20 minutes to put together the first quote. You're pulling all these different variables in. So we've really tried now to kind of automate that as best we can to give people a ballpark figure. It's a work in progress, something I actually love working on. And I think we're in a good place with that now. But like Eva said, it's important to, with Riso especially, manage expectations. Because we too get a lot of people trying to print something and we're like, no, you just want a digital glossy magazine. We're not the best people for that, because if we just try to take it on and it doesn't look good, nobody's going to be happy, and it'll be a waste of paper and resources and everybody's time. So trying to manage that. We bring people into the studio a lot to go through a lot of zines, a lot of books, show people a lot of examples, a lot of things from other publishers, so you can see what Riso is capable of. So showing that, and then we are starting to publish more other artists, and the way we found those folks is some people have contacted us and be like, I want to publish this project. So it's talking, seeing if it's a good fit for our press, and also kind of walking them through that entire process. We haven't been publishing any that we don't add design to. It's a full conversation. We're adding design. It's, talking about bindings, prototyping together, cutting things out, adding a little bit of play in there as we go. So we're really forming the idea, chaos mode, forming it all together. And that's a really fun process to work with someone. But yeah, we're excited to be publishing more and more out there.
Okay, so similarly to Eva and Tara, we do publishing work and we also do contract work. And in terms of publishing work, choosing to work with people has generally been something that we solicit work from or ask a specific artist who might not be working necessarily in a book field, but might be working in a different discipline of art that might be really interesting to try to find a way to translate their sensibilities and thought process into a book form. And so generally it's maybe 1 to 2 artists a year that we'll work with, that come from within our team. And then we work over the course of a year to consider what they're working on, what they're thinking about, to understand what the possibilities of bookmaking could be. And then doing some research in terms of prototyping or going to special collections libraries. The Met has a really incredible special collections library that is publicly accessible. Most universities And most institutions have publicly accessible special collections where you can just go look at artist books and touch artist books, and kind of learn a background of where your work might be based in and what has already happened before. And so after that sort of research process, we'll work with them to try to figure out what the materials are, what the structure is, and then produce it. And then in that production process, I fund the production process, and then we split the sales 50-50. And then sometimes, every once in a while, there's artists who propose a project to us that would necessarily be sort of a commissioned or client project, but it's something that ties into our ethos as viewing the book as an art object, some contemporaneous to painting or drawing or something, an object that stands on its own. And if that is aligned, then we will work with them on producing book projects. But in terms of client work, we've done the same thing with our quote intake form, and it's not a perfect process. I think that it's always continually changing, but we try to get everyone on sort of the same level to understand what we're capable of doing, what we have the bandwidth for, to help people try to understand what the cost might be. We also do everything is fully custom that we do, so I don't have anything that's set and there's no limitations, and I'll do kind of anything that you want to do, whether that's one book. Once we bound a book as like a bunch of like, the plastic was like shaved into like different shapes, and so we found a way to bind that into a structure so it didn't fall out. So it'll kind of be anything, but I think setting expectations and having an open conversation, and I think back to that end where like printers won't communicate with you, I try to do my best to communicate with people why we might not be taking a project or why something might not make sense for us to work on. But yeah, I think that's kind of the gist.
No, I just like remember things I wanted to say. Another way we find a lot of people is we try to have a lot of events and workshops and things during the year for people to come in and like experience Riso printing, see what it can do. So a big way we found a few folks is we have flash printing days where people can come in and book like a 45-minute slot, and we will print your poster or print for you on the spot. And that's charged at like sliding scale what people can pay. But through that, on these days where we just have like maybe 10 different artists coming through, artists are just people who are like, I was curious about Riso, I just wanted to print this random thing I made and see it. That's been a really good way for us just to like connect with new artists and meet people we haven't. So anytime we have things where more people can come into the studio, those are also great ways to meet people, talk to people, and get them thinking about publishing their own work too.
Kind of jumping off of that, how do y'all see the community of small publishers growing? I guess more specifically New York based, since you're all within the city now. What are things you would like to see going forward? What are things that you're looking forward to or kind of expect with everything? I'm sorry, I keep not finishing sentences.
I'll go, we can pass this way. One thing that I'm really excited about that we're starting, I've been talking to B from Genderville a lot. First of all, like the community of small printers, publishers, folks in New York is my like hands down favorite thing about doing this work. It is like I went home last night and I was just like, how is everybody so lovely and so nice, and just the people that you want to be around, like those are the people making books too, and it's really amazing, and that's absolutely the best part. But that being said, like everybody shares, resource sharing, knowledge sharing, and anytime we have the chance to open the studio, bring new people in, we're always trying to find ways to do that, to make it cost effective so that anybody can come to, no matter your financial situation. We do offer like private Riso classes, but we also are doing more group ones, open studio, different ways. And if anybody ever wanted to take a class and you can't afford it, like just send us an email. We're willing to work with people. But the community's been really supportive. B from Gender Fail and I and Gonzalo have been talking with other folks too about starting like we're jokingly calling it the Small Press Business Association, but a collective of folks who are kind of doing the same work, doing it not just like as a side thing, but people who are really trying to learn the business and survive off of this work as well. New York's obviously a tremendously expensive city, so the biggest like learning curve in all this for us has been how to run a small business, because that's what you're doing, and you know, you got to pay taxes and balance the books and do all these things that when you're just publishing zines you didn't really think about at first. So resource sharing on that, and the Small Press Association, we wanted to bring together people who are doing the same work, bring in experts to kind of teach us more about the business. It's also just lovely to have folks to like commiserate with. So yeah, that'll be something we're doing going forward.
Well, that sounds awesome. Well, I know this sounds so cliche, you already said this, but like the small publisher community is a lovely place. I also think that Riso printers are a whole different kind also, and they're like extra lovely and yeah. So in my particular experience, since I moved here a year ago from South America, it's been weird because on one hand, I arrived here and I think I have more friends here than the ones that I had in Colombia. Well, I'm not from Colombia, so I moved to Colombia too. That's why I don't want you to think that I was born in Colombia and I didn't have any friends in Colombia. Okay, so when I moved here, I knew so many people from this field because of printed matter art book fairs and all this network of fairs and yeah, meeting people while you travel. So for me, it's been like coming home a little bit. So it's been weird because I knew you guys from afar, but then we were neighbors, and it's been really lovely. And I forgot the second part of the question, so I'm just gonna say that. What I'm looking moving forward. Yeah, I'm still, I don't want to sound like a newbie, but I'm still learning and trying to understand the whole personal situation living in this huge city and such. But one thing that I particularly look forward is to start to more conversations from people, especially for me, it's with people in South America. Because when you're in South America, like any connection that you can have in this city is really powerful and it's huge. And I think that people that live here know that, but sometimes like you get caught up in living here and this being so normal. So this is one thing that I particularly look forward. And well, I'm seeing now Simone there from Miriam Gallery. And for example, like projects like the one that Simone has here in Brooklyn are very dear to me because he's just like, how do you say this? Like building these bridges with people in South America.
Yeah, I think to continue that too, I think part of the special thing about like, there is a lot of like, once you're kind of in it and you're making things and you're just, you know, not necessarily trying to like make those connections, but if you're able to get into fairs, if you're talking to people at fairs, if you're going to flash printing, if you're going to like a book launch at Secret Riso, or if you're going to Miriam Gallery to do some of their programming, like Simone and Jacqueline Miriam Galleries in Williamsburg, and you know, they offer a really special place for all of us to be able to have programming and to have, they hosted, I organized a bake sale for the Brooklyn Art Book Fair, and I think that was really special to have a lot of people who are new to the city or new to publishing and just wanted to have some connection. I think that's, I think in terms of like future things, I'm trying to build different opportunities that are not always fair touch points, because I think a lot of us, like during fairs, are we're selling stuff or we're explaining what we're doing for work, and we're not necessarily having the time to spend with each other to have these conversations about what we're doing for business or what we're doing for presses. So yeah, I also organized a picnic that I'll do again in some point in the fall this year, where it's just like where people can come and show up and eat stuff and talk to other people regardless of where you are in the book field, whether it's like you're kind of interested in doing it, you've done it for a really long time, and I think it's super special to have that opportunity happen. And I think it's really uniquely kind of I think a lot of places have special publishing communities just because no one's really competitive. Like, we're all in it to support each other because we all do different things and we want to see everyone do really well. But I've also been interested in like trying to make bridges between other cities and other publishing. So I've kind of like building bridges in like Tokyo and in Berlin, just as I've like done other fairs to travel. But I think it's special, and I think there's a lot of like new people who want to just make books and be involved in it. Like, so it just exploded, I think, over the pandemic, and it's super cool to like have all these new people making really cool things.
Also just want to share, like Hannah, like she said, started the Publishers Picnic, and now folks that they met in Berlin are now doing like a Berlin version of the Publishers Picnic, which I think is really cute and cool, and appreciate Hannah for that.
Do you guys have anything you want to ask each other? We talked about doing that, maybe? Yeah,
Okay, so the difference, I think, in my project and between your projects is that I have a staff who I am beholden to and I collaborate with, but ultimately it's something that I lead in a direction kind of by myself. So I'm interested to know what it's like working as part of a duo, and what strengths there are to that and what challenges there are. Because I think in starting projects, I think I really wanted to have someone with me, but it never really materialized. So I've just done it on my own, but I'm curious to know like what that process is like and how that changes your like practice.
Well, in my case, I feel I've been so lucky in life to find partners with whom I can think with. So Calipso, it's Camilo, Otero, and me, but actually Calipso is a lot of people that are around, that have been, there's some that are now, that went, like, for example, Osvaldo Garcia is here, he's a huge part of Calipso, but we have a lot of collaborators. And I remember when we started, we call ourselves a collective, and whenever they were asking like who was Calipso, we never said our names. We said that it was a collective of artists, and we actually had this tote bag with a logo, our motto, that was something like, I don't remember, but it was always doing something with others, and it was like this project was always an excuse to work with someone, and therefore like the residency program. And for me, I don't want to say that it's all easy. Like, whenever you need to talk with people, you need to negotiate a lot of stuff and like give up some of the power that you have, and like sometimes you need to do things that you don't necessarily love. But I've been so happy to be surrounded by these like-minded people that I've encountered in different places in the world and in different times of my life.
Secret Riso Club was started by Gonzalo, my partner in the studio, and we started working together just out of, he's my best friend. We've been best friends for a long time. And we just kind of naturally started working together more until it became more and more official. But it is really, really lovely to have a partner in that. Like I said before, our strengths and weaknesses like kind of complement each other. It's important. We have to take time to like protect our friendship away from business as well. So we'll have, we're like, we still need to like be friends. And doing that, we do a lot of research into like solidarity economy and learning new ways of doing business. And through that, I found this really amazing like questionnaire of getting to know somebody's values around business that, we've been good friends for like 8-9 years, but even just like deepening our relationship in our practice has been really important in like learning how to communicate better with each other, making sure we're on the same page. But I do feel really grateful that I never have to question his values. Like I know that our values are the same, which is really great. And also just nice to have like a cheerleader and be someone else's cheerleader. And or like, yeah, nice to be able to argue with someone and know you're okay at the end of the day.
Yeah, you can just start answering it, because my question was, I was curious for you to, in particular, like, what were the places that you would like to, like, build bridges with? Like, what places that you have in mind outside the city? That you want to build bridges, or, like, places that you have in mind, not necessarily that you have started or you have a connection with that, but some places that you're curious, or...
I started to answer that. I think it's really been, what's been super special is it's kind of just anywhere that I travel. If I travel somewhere for a fair, Gonzalo and I both did Miss Reed Fair in Berlin, which is happening in September this year. And it's a fair that's actually pretty mellow. So it gives you time to walk around and talk to all the other exhibitors. So we made a lot of friends. And there's someone that I met who has a really great art book space, who has a gallery space and sells artist books out of it. And she was interested in, I published a book in 2020 with Hanson Coleman, who runs Childish Books. And it's called How to Book. And there are 17 different contributors from across like across New York. Mostly and in some other places who'd kind of crossed over, been in sort of the New York scene. And she was really interested in that idea because the European publishing scene, as far as like funding and distribution, are very different than they are in the United States. And so she kind of took that idea and like put the same prompt of questions out to Berlin publishers. So there's going to be a German, and I think they decided to translate it into English too, but there'll be a German and Berlin version of that coming out in September. And I also met some other people at the Miss Reed Fair who are based in Yokohama, and I was in Japan last year and asked them if I could go see their studio. And they also now are really interested in having that idea translated for the Tokyo publishing scene. So there'll be one coming out in Tokyo in November. So I think just like anywhere you travel, books are such a nice excuse to be able to go see people who you think do really cool work. I think that's the coolest thing about it, where you're like, I'm an artist and I do these things. And I think just reaching out, honestly, like when I was in Europe for the fair last year, I was doing a quick stopover in Paris, and there's a really fantastic bookbinder, like absolutely incredible work, and it's usually just her out of her studio. And so she kind of knew someone that I knew, and I emailed her and asked if I could just stop by her studio. But I think just having that, or I got to go see 3 Star Books in Paris, which is really cool. They make absolutely stunning books, and I was so lucky that I reached out and said, hey, I'm really interested, do you have maybe an hour where I could just stop by and hang out? So I think building those places where anywhere that you have the opportunity to travel, trying to look and see who might have affinities with what you're working on, or you just want to talk with them more. I think that is something that's, I think anywhere that I can build, I will.
I would also say like traveling for book fairs is the world's greatest thing. It's exhausting because book fairs are wild, but you're also like going out every night with the publishers and building that, and it's a really fun way to travel. We just went to Norway for the first time at the beginning of this year in April, and got to meet a lot of different people like throughout Europe. Like Hannah said, Gonzalo went to Berlin last year, so we're going back to do a pop-up with some folks that they met last year. Going to some friends who do a fair in Valencia in Spain. So we're excited to go like visit them and do their fair as well. But yeah, just excited to travel more and like continue building that network. And then when they come into New York, like being able to host people and, you know, give that back as well has been really nice. Okay, can I ask a quick question? Okay. It is really lovely to be able to do something we really enjoy every day, but it is also exhausting a bit. So just wondering, like, how y'all balance, like, a creative time, because it is a business in a way. I mean, it is a business, but also, like, you want to, like, foster your own creative practice. So how are you balancing, like, your own creative time, your own just, like, personal, be a person time, and work?
Hola? Yeah, I feel I'm not the best example for this. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't want to romanticize work, and I feel like free time, it's precious and it's important, and leisure and such. I enjoy a lot printing. I enjoy a lot teaching how to Riso print. It's like my happy place, so I get some pleasure out of it. But I try to keep my Sundays and not work on Sundays. But yeah, maybe I'm not the best example. And this city is crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Like also when I was living in Colombia, I had my studio in my own house. And it was the pandemic, and I don't know if you've ever been in Cali, Colombia. It's a place where it's always summer, like always hardcore summer. And there's a saying there that when you're gonna meet someone, it's like I tell you, like,